Green Party leader Zach Polanski is looking ahead to his party's conference in Bournemouth, but with a different light now because he's also Jewish and grew up within the community very close to where the Heaton Park Synagogue is located. And he joins us now from Bournemouth. My goodness me, you know, it was going to be a big weekend for you anyway. I imagine your head is in a slightly different place now.
Undoubtedly, this is an incredibly difficult time for me and the Jewish community, but we're also a resilient community. And I believe an antidote to this kind of terrorist attack, we don't yet know the motives, is electoral politics. So although this has been difficult, I am determined that this will be both our biggest and best Green Party conference ever. We've got 80,000 members. Just to say why that's so significant, that's a 33% increase in membership in just the past few months. We've had lots of defections at the council level from the Labour Party, and I am determined that everybody in this country knows that my message this weekend is we're going to lower your bills, protect the National Health Service and invest in our communities.
Which are important messages, of course, and one I'm sure you'll be discussing and will be covering. But we have heard that politicians generally, from all sides, this has been commented, successive governments, have a part to play in tackling anti-Semitism and indeed not tackling it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm one of 5 people in the last 100 years who happen to be Jewish and a leader of a British political party. So I take tackling anti-Semitism really seriously. It's both personal and it's political. At the same time, I also know there's other rising hate crime in this country. I'm also a gay man, and we know that hate crime against the LGBT community has risen 125% in the last 5 years. Islamophobia is also on the rise. Now, these are different hate crimes, but ultimately, we know that when they come for one minority community, they come for all minority communities. And so the only authentic and passionate response is solidarity. We must stick together.
But what needs to change, though? I mean, these sounds, you know, real positive words, but do things physically need to change in the way politics takes place and where we use our language? You know, what tangible things do people in your position, in all walks of life, I guess, need to do to try and eliminate this hatred, Zach?
Well, the first thing I'd say is let's not dismiss positive words. I think the words that we use, the rhetoric we use, and the language of cohesion, the language of coming together, and the language of solidarity is incredibly important. Yes, there will be rightful conversations in the next few days about security, about defence, but I don't think we can just employ more officers or spend more money on weapons or build higher walls. I think it's deeper than that. And actually, this country right now is deep in a conversation about patriotism. And I think a lot of this is about how do we look at our communities? How do we look at what community cohesion is? How do we make sure that everyone knows that they're here, that they can belong, that they can love this country, and we love them too? I think far too often we've heard the politics of hate, the politics of division. I think it's really important we reject that, both at the ballot box, but in fact, in every single conversation, particularly in the political space, that we're always talking about how can we bring people together? How can we have a more positive vision of what Britain can be?
Can I ask you, you on this show and before, and in many other places, you refer to what's happening in the Middle East, in Gaza, as a genocide by the Israeli government. We've seen protests, lots of protests up and down the country on a weekly basis taking place, where lots of people on those protests will agree with you and they will say it is a genocide. But even yesterday, after these horrific attacks in Manchester, these protests still took place in the evenings in Manchester and in London. We've had counter-terrorism policing experts on this show just a short while ago. He thought some of these protests felt sort of celebratory, you know, as if people were joyous for some reason. What would you say now to those people on those protests who probably looked up to you and have probably listened to your words and thought, yeah, there's somebody, senior politician, who agrees with us, we're going to go out on the streets. What would you now say to them about protests that they're thinking of taking part in or organising this week or in weeks to come?
Well, I can't speak for that individual protest because I wasn't there, but I'll answer the question more widely. I'm a Jewish man who felt that attack yesterday incredibly deeply. And at the same time, because they're separate issues, and we need to be clear they're separate issues, every single day, the equivalent of a classroom of children is dying in Gaza. And you say that I call this a genocide. That's also what the United Nations and many genocide scholars call it. We have to not be anti-Semitic and conflate the conversation that's happening in the Middle East with the attack that happened yesterday. They're completely separate issues. So I still defend people's rights to go out and protest. Of course, we always need to do this and be light and sensitive to the situation. But as well as a terrorist attack on our soil today, there is a genocide happening in Gaza. There's a flotilla also that's been stopped at the siege. All of these conversations are complex and they're nuanced, and we need to have space in our political conversation to be able to balance all of these things and make sure what's really important, that we're tackling both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in this country too, and we can tackle what's happening in the Middle East.
It's so important, isn't it? Because you're right, that is at the core of that conflation is at the core of the problems. And yet Alex Hearn, co-director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism, described the marches, particularly the ones in Manchester last night, as tone-deaf and unacceptable state of affairs that needs to be stopped for the public order. And I wonder if with freedom of speech, the right to defend that classroom of children that you just talked about, to raise awareness, to stand up, all those things we believe in that are part of what we love about this country, but also there's the fear and hatred, and the language used generates more.
I think it's really problematic if someone is trying to weaponise the attack that happened yesterday to try and silence protest in this country against the genocide. Again, they're separate issues. Of course, we should always look to be respectful, but we also need to be clear what this government is doing. They are selling arms to Israel. They are sharing intelligence for an ongoing genocide. So I'm less concerned about the policing of language and civility, and I'm more concerned about the actual bombs that are landing on people. Of course, I would make a call to everyone to be sensitive to the Jewish community, to recognise what's happening. But again, speaking as a member of the Jewish community, I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they had to be silent about a genocide that's happening because of an outrageous, atrocious attack that happened on our soil too. These are separate things, and we should condemn them all.
Zach, we are running out of time. We'll leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Zach Polanski there, leader of the Green Party, Jewish, of course, and he will be now very busy over the next week, next few days with the party
this
conference.
weekend conference in Bournemouth.